Okay, Jeff, how about you introduce this this epic
I
battle?
would int- I would introduce this as the post Motown early '80s battle, old regime to new regime.
Perfect. Yeah. Out with the old, in with the new.
Out with the kind of old, in with the kind of new.
True. Yeah, true.
Jackson 5, see ya, Commodores later.
All right. Awesome. Okay, good introduction. Okay, so maybe I'll go first, and then you'll do your rant. So okay, so as far as sales are concerned, obviously, I think Thriller is the biggest selling album of all time. Wikipedia is saying 70 million worldwide. 70.
You greedy bastard, Michael Jackson.
That is insane. Yeah. Okay. And Lionel Richie, what, 20 million?
Sounds about right.
Which is, still probably one of the biggest records of that year. But yeah, Thriller was this unprecedented phenomenon of album sales. So nothing's going to compete with that. But yeah, you're right. They're definitely of the same early 80s, kind of entering the mid 80s. So it's sort of that transition point where things are starting to sound a little digital, little DX7y. I guess for people that don't know, the DX7 is the synthesizer that really changed the sound and made things sound very 80s. So that was right on the cusp. You can kind of hear it a little bit more with the Lionel Richie album, Can't Slow Down. Thriller is like almost kind of still in the old school a little bit. Like 82 is really right on the cusp. I'd say 83 is on the cusp. 82 I would say is still kind of still at the end of the 70s almost. And
We,
that's my
we could
favorite.
call it pre-DX. Pre-DX.
Yeah. Like I love that era from like 78 to 82. Like that's just the golden age of studio session mastery, studio recording. It's just such an amazing time. Um, okay, so really quickly, so I would say for me it's a landslide. Uh, I'll say what it is at the end, but yeah, for me it's definitely a landslide. I'll start with Lionel. So it's an amazing record. It's got some huge hits on it. All Night Long was massive. Hello, massive hit. It's got one of my favorite producers, David Foster, on track number 6, The Only One. That sort of you're beginning to hear the sound of the David Foster sound, which really was a huge sound of the 80s because he produced so many things. It's an acquired taste because it's
Man in motion.
a copy. Yep. So Can't Slow Down, the opening track, feels like it's a little bit of a copy of the Michael Jackson track. Want to be starting something? Sounds pretty similar. I would have a feeling that Lionel probably was very well aware of Thriller when he was making this record, as most people probably were. so, so that it feels like a little
To
bit
be
of
fair, I think Thriller was still on the top of the charts too.
yeah.
Probably when this came out. So
Yeah. So I guaranteed Motown is probably saying, "We want you to do something like this," of course, right? So I don't blame Lionel for, kind of chasing Thriller a little bit. That's fine. Um, I gotta say, man, epic guitar solo on "Running with the Night." That's an insane shred solo by Steve Lukather. That is fun.
one of the best guitar solos ever, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, yeah, I would absolutely love to cover that one. That's awesome. Um, but yeah, I will say I felt. I mean, this album has some great moments. For me, it falls a little into the lightweight side for me on certain tracks, like Penny Lover, Stuck on You. I mean, great tracks, but just a little light for me. You know, I so for that reason, I'm gonna say Thriller absolutely is my choice for this battle. I think Thriller is not only is it a sales phenomenon, it's an artistic achievement phenomenon. I mean, every song on this is, I would say, perfect. Want to be starting something really sounds unique. Heavy use of a drum machine. I'm not sure what drum machine's being used there. I'm I should know it off by heart, but definitely heavy use of drum machines on this album, and that was definitely new for the time, especially on such a huge record like this.
My man Quincy was shaking things up a bit.
Absolutely, yeah, yeah. And I think the live drums was Jeff Porcaro, obviously, who's one of the biggest session players of all time. Uh, he drummed on, I mean, pretty much any album from '75 to 1990. Like it was Jeff Porcaro. He was the guy that you would call. So he played on tracks 3, 5, 7, and 9. Cool. Of course, you got Lionel had his epic Steve Lukather solo. I mean, this album has the epic Eddie Van Halen solo on Beat It, which is, beyond iconic. I mean, it's probably the most famous Van Halen solo. Probably more famous than any of Van Halen's actual solos for his band, right? It's crazy. So that was yeah, it's got guest stars Paul McCartney on The Girl Is Mine. That's awesome. I mean, what can you say, right? Thriller revolutionized MTV with that zombie video. That was ahead of its time, right? I mean, zombies are more trendy now than they ever have been, and he was doing zombies back then. That's pretty amazing. PYT, for me, my favorite tracks on this album are the album tracks. I love Baby Be Mine and PYT. Those are my two personal favorites off this record. They still have that kind of sort of old school feeling to them, which I love. They both got live drumming on it. I think Baby Be Mine has live drumming on it. But yeah, PYT definitely has live drumming on it. Yeah, I don't know. I mean, obviously, Human Nature, beautiful ballad. The Lady in My Life is sort of a sleeper tune that's still incredible ballad. I mean, obviously, Beat It, Billie Jean, Thriller. I mean, I don't really need to hear these songs again because I've heard them so many times. They're great. Little tired of them, but but yeah, I mean, just an absolutely epic album. Some people say it kind of saved the music business in a lot of ways. It revolutionized the '80s. Really, I mean, it was a phenomenon. And Lionel Ritchie, great album, but I think it definitely doesn't live up to this one, commercially or artistically. So that's my take. I'm going for Thriller. That's my pick.
So, love the outfit. The
Pastel,
yeah,
light pastel colors. Yeah,
the pastel pink blazer, always a good look.
yeah.
The John Hall mini fro.
His
the '80s porno stash.
His Commodore's fro was like kind of out like this, right? He had like one of those epic side fros in the Commodores. Yeah.
Time to clean it up a bit for '83. Huh?
Yeah.
So the reason why I thought these two would be a good idea is because when I was a very young boy, obviously Michael Jackson was the coolest guy on earth. Thriller was the biggest album ever. And like it was just the biggest. You couldn't go anywhere without hearing it.
Yeah.
But the strange thing is, my dad really loved Lionel Ritchie, and not specifically Lionel Ritchie as a whole, I guess, but just this album. So my dad didn't particularly like black music, or like my dad loved the Beatles, and my dad didn't even like new music. But my dad loved Lionel. Like this album, I remember, like if I wanted to hear. These were the two albums that were in my dad's car. That was it, just these two. So I'm very familiar with both of them. Can't slow me down. Yeah, they're both 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Lionel Ritchie a little shorter. Thriller, I think, has 9. Lionel Ritchie has 8 songs.
Yep.
So They both spawned many, many hit singles. I think Thriller had 8 out of 9 singles.
Yeah.
8 tracks were released as singles, but Lionel Richie had All Night Long, Penny Lover, Stuck on You, Love Will Find a Way, and Hello. And I'm not sure if Running with the Night. So that's a pretty fair, that's a pretty big, they were obviously, Motown was banking that this was going to be their big album of the year. Anyway, it was definitely a step up for Lionel Richie. I think his self-titled debut came in '81, if I'm not mistaken. Not as good. All Night Long, fantastic. Penny Lover. Definitely more in the R&B realm for Lionel Richie. Definitely sticking a little more with the Motown. I think Motown was they were trying to get more into the pop realm of things, but Lionel Richie, this is a good album that it's got a lot of both. I think it straddles the line of pop and R&B quite well, because Lionel Richie certainly is a crooner. Really nice voice. R&B is where his heart and soul is at, but yet he can do the pop thing too with All Night Long. I don't think the Lionel Richie one has aged as well. I think Thriller is timeless, and maybe it's just because it's all the songs are so very different. I think the Lionel Richie one is very much just stuck in the 80s, and although you still do hear these songs quite a lot on the radio, Running with the Night on the Lionel Richie one is definitely the standout for me. Like, that guitar solo is, truly, I think if I had to say what my favorite guitar solo of all time is, I would either say that one or Running Down a Dream by Tom Petty. Those two guitar solos just really, maybe, of course, Eruption, I guess.
Yeah.
But, those three are the, there wasn't a lot of guitar in this album, or at least like big rock guitar solos. So, I mean, that really sticks out to me. Running with the Night, too, is it's maybe a little edgy for Lionel Richie, talking about like just a lustful relationship where two people can't keep their hands off each other. And, maybe it wasn't destined to last, but it was certainly going to last all night long. Know what I'm saying? I really do like Love Will Find a Way as well. That to me is a really, really good, like just a silky smooth R&B type. Got a minimal amount of funk to it in there too. It's got a really good groove to it. Stuck on You, Penny Lover, Hello. Those are your schmaltzy ballads that they're good songs, and the video for Hello is very memorable too, with the blind lady and Lionel Richie being a creep and stalking her. But yeah, pound for pound, Thriller, like even the cover with that white jacket and the tiger that he would, like, little baby tiger that he had with him.
Yeah.
Pound for pound, Thriller is, it has to be considered one of the greatest albums ever made. Front to back, no duds, no dull moments. Every song sounds different. There's not even a dull moment. It's like, what record label was he on? Epic. It's like they just opened. They handed Quincy Jones a blank check and said, "Whatever you need, go for it." Paul McCartney, do it. Eddie Van Halen, go for it. Vincent Price, no problem.
That's right, Vincent Price. So the reason I think Thriller had a bit more of a push was the Off the Wall, the album came before, was massive as well. Like that was I think 20 million worldwide. So that was a smash hit record. So Thriller was the follow up to Michael Jackson's big smash album. So yeah, so
Smash.
people
I
so the
believe it
label
was
wanted
his
to push.
second album too, if I'm not mistaken. I think
Nope, it's his
it was
sixth.
his debut.
Sixth.
Sick.
So
Wow.
so Thriller is his sixth album. Yeah,
Okay.
he did four records in the '70s that he did when he was a kid still, and they're not very big. They're very, I mean, they're good. They're good albums, but they're very light '70s records. So he's been at it for a while. Whereas, yeah, the Lionel Richie's album is his second solo album.
Okay.
Yeah. Yeah.
Uh, Thriller definitely brings the funk too. I mean,
Oh yeah.
want to be starting something really, it really, really gets the dance floor moving. Baby Be Mine, pretty funky.
Yep.
The Girl Is Mine to me is the schmaltzy ballad, and my dad loved it because of Paul McCartney. The video's pretty iconic, where him and Michael are fighting over the chick.
Yeah.
Um, Thriller, of course, biggest video. I remember the first time I watched, I was scared shitless when Michael Jackson turned into a werewolf or whatever. Um, Billie Jean, though, still to this day, I think Billie Jean is the best dance floor track ever. I mean, just the groove of it.
Yeah.
And I remember I've got a few stories about this album. So for one, Michael Jackson didn't really do a lot of writing himself. Like, he had a huge team behind him, but he had a home studio and he would work by himself. And one day he just came in to Quincy and said, "Quincy, I've been working, alone, and I came up with this song." And he played it for Quincy Jones. He kind of just did it himself at home in the studio. It was Billie Jean, and it was totally Michael Jackson, front to back. It was all like no co-writers, no. I guess he had some musicians that played on it, but like he did it himself. Presented it to Quincy Jones. Quincy's like, "Man, this is great. You did this all by like on your own." He said, "Yeah, like I felt inspired to just write this tune." He said the demo version is pretty much exactly like the finished version. To Like they really didn't do much to it. So again, anyone that says Michael Jackson didn't really have the skills to do his own work, Billie Jean is the example. And about like it's still like I can't help but move every time I I hear that dum, 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 dum. And also the record label. The only complaint with it was that it was long, and they said, Quincy, it's you got to tell Michael to cut it down. It's got to be like a little closer to the 3 minute mark in order to. And so Quincy went, Michael, we really need to tighten this up a little bit and shorten. He said, "Quincy, it makes me want to move. Like we can't tighten it up a little bit. It is what it is." So he went back to the label and said, "Look, this makes Michael Jackson dance." So Michael's firm on it, and they're like, "Well, okay," and there you go. And the song is pretty much exactly like Michael Jackson had intended. With Beat It, they wanted Eddie Van Halen. They knew they wanted Eddie Van Halen, and Eddie Van Halen said, I got this call. I thought it was a joke at first. I thought someone was calling, but finally I took the call, and it was Quincy Jones. He says, "Yeah, we want you to be on Michael Jackson's album." And he thought, "Yeah, that's kind of cool. I'll do it." So, anyways, he said he took a cab and showed up. He had three guitars, and he was not really sure what he was going to get into or how long it was. But he said he walked right in the studio. They're working. Michael Jackson is in the control room. He walks into the room where he's going to record, and Quincy comes in and says, "Hey, Eddie, nice to see you. Listen," and Eddie's like, "Okay, well, what do you want me to do?" And he says, "Okay, we're going to play you the track, and we just want you to do what you do. We did like no preconceived notions. You just get in there and do exactly what you do." And he says, "Okay, which guitar?" And he says, "Well, obviously, use the Frankenstrack. You know, that's the one we want you to use, but just go in there and do what you need to do. So, anyways, he just did a little warm up practice for about maybe 5 minutes. Played in the track. Then, when it was time to record, he did his solo, and Quincy's like, "Wow, man, that was incredible. We're gonna do one more take though, just to see what we can get." So again, he did one more take, and then after that, Quincy's like, "Wow, Eddie, that was awesome. Thank you very much." And he's like, "That's it? 2 takes?" And he said, "Yeah, we got all we need, man. That was awesome." And he said it was the easiest money he ever made. He wasn't. He said from the time he walked in the door to the time he left, it wasn't more than 30 minutes.
Wow.
And he said it was just super easy money. And what they did is they just edited 2 of those. They took the 2 takes. They took one and they kind of overlapped the other one a little bit. That was it. Done, complete, right on the record. No embellishments, no nothing. So
Awesome.
Eddie Van Halen was very pleased with it. Everybody else is very pleased. And when it comes to the track Thriller, Vincent Price was, by this time in his career, he was pretty bummed out. I mean, in the 70s, and, he had to do he did that stupid kids show, The Hilarious House of Frankenstein, which he enjoyed.
Mm-hmm.
But he was a trained actor, who he did Shakespeare and stuff, and he really thought that his talents were squandered on like shitty fucking B movies and all that, and playing mad scientists and and this and that. And he was really bummed at this point in his career. He's older. These are the only gigs he's getting. So when he got the call for Thriller, he wasn't, enthused about it. But it came with a pretty big paycheck, way bigger than he was used to getting. So, he's decided he was going to have to do it, reluctantly though. So the songwriter there were multiple songwriters that worked on Thriller, but the one guy that he wrote the little Thriller rap on the way to the studio, because he just really couldn't think about how he was going to approach it. He didn't want to insult Vincent Price either by doing something that was stupid or shitty sounding. But anyway, so he presented this rap to Vincent Price. He also wasn't sure. Quincy Jones had doubts whether Vincent Price could. There's a difference from being on stage and being in a recording studio, and he just wasn't sure if Vincent Price was going to be able to deliver the goods. Like, they wanted his voice. They didn't know if he could actually do what they wanted. Mm-hmm. But anyways, Vincent Price showed up, true professional. He nailed it. Whether it was the first or second take, he absolutely nailed it. He did everything that they wanted, even in the way that he didn't exactly rap it. He more spoke it, but still in that creepy voice. They loved the articulation and how it came off. Also, I think they did another verse they didn't use in the final version of Thriller, just to kind of tighten it up a bit. But anyways, Vincent Price was, he was happy to get the paycheck anyway. But he said in retrospect, after Thriller dropped, it was in retrospect, it was the best thing he ever did in his whole career, because children would walk up to him on the street and they would say, "Can you do the laugh for us? Can you do that laugh?" And he said it always made children smile and it made them happy. And he said none of his other work ever gave him as much pleasure as entertaining kids like that, because every child that walked up to him was so happy when he would just do that laugh for them. So it was a really nice capper to end off his. He still did more stuff after that, but that was the best thing he ever did in his career, he said. So anyways, back to my review. Human Nature, stunningly beautiful. For a guy who was born into the entertainment industry, it's a very poignant look, and almost nothing schmaltzy about it. It's a true expression of soul, very moving. Uh, PYT for me is a little on the lighter end of things. To me, I'm not gonna say it's a throwaway track, but it is. It's just lighter to me. Yeah, it's got Alvin and the Chipmunks in the background, and you know, um, it's got a good groove to it. But my personal favorite song on the album is "The Lady in My Life," which
Killer.
to me is I don't know if Michael Jackson ever truly loved a woman or you know, but man, he makes you believe it in that song. Like his impassioned vocals are they're they they they're just they're so romantic to me and so he delivers them so effectively and all the ad-libbing in the background and he really sounds like he's pining for that the one true love of his life and even when I was a kid I found it moving and I didn't know anything about that kind of human emotion. I was too young to understand what loving a woman was all about, but even now that I'm older, I find myself still swayed by it and moved to this day. It is such a beautiful song. Um, I'm gonna have to agree with you, Jimmy. Landslide victory.
Nice. Yep.
Honorable mention though to Lionel Richie.
Yeah.
I do like listening to that album though too. But Thriller is a fall. You can always fall back on that one. You can play Thriller anywhere. You can play it at a party with your peers. You can play it for children. You can play it at Halloween. You can play it when you're trying to make love to your woman. It truly is an album for every single occasion. The only thing he's missing is a Christmas song. Um,
Yeah.
it truly is a masterpiece in every second of that album is well thought out. The cover, the videos, the promo, every ad lib and background vocal and little thing that is maybe just an afterthought in other albums or something that they don't spend a lot of time on. Like Quincy Jones put his heart and soul into that, and the no amount of time was too much to make that album perfect. I can only imagine how much time that took to do in the studio. It must have been months,
Mm-hmm.
and a cost of hundreds of thousands of dollars for studio time in those days.
Yeah.
But the payoff was certainly. I mean, the proof is most definitely in the pudding, and every single song on Thriller it is just absolutely wonderful. And I gotta say too that I buy records very regularly. I still shop for music. I shop in person at stores, and like Thriller, they just keep fucking re-releasing it. Like I bought this. It's the anniversary. I don't even know what anniversary edition it is, but they keep selling them. People keep buying them. And even Michael Jackson's somewhat tarnished image doesn't really affect like that album is so well loved and ingrained uh, in 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 the world's memory. Like my son loves songs on that album. I love a lot of songs on that album, young and old. People older than me. I mean, I was in 1982. I was 4, so my parents, my dad didn't hate uh, Thriller. My grandpa didn't complain when it was on in the car like he always would, and he would want to listen to talk radio, but he was okay with us listening to Thriller. So it really, truly is timeless. And I can't think of many. In fact, I'm going to go out on a ledge here and say I can't think of another single album that is so universally loved, young and old, as Thriller. I don't think anybody can has a could possibly have a bad thing to say about that album. It truly is perfect in every way, shape, or form. No duds, non-stop filler. Michael Jackson at his prime. And I'm going to go out on another ledge here and say that Quincy Jones captures his vocals in such a way that, you know, if you were going to say Michael Jackson was the greatest singer of all time, singer, not entertainer or dancer or anything, just singer,
Yeah.
I would have to give that argument some serious weight.
Yeah.
Because his vote, and all you would have to do is say, Michael Jackson, greatest singer of all time, and I say Thriller. Like, there are so many tracks on this album where the vocals are majestic, or he can hit the highs, he can belt it out, he can whisper, he can hoo-hoo and grab his crotch and you know, just I can't really say enough about how great a singer that man is. And I think he maybe had a little bit of an unfair advantage, being that he was born and bred to be a singer. You know, from the age of 5, they were recording him, and you know, so obviously he'd learned a thing or two in, you know, in by the time Thriller came out, I think he was 22, maybe. But I mean, he had 18 years of practice, you know, and you know, the guy was an immense talent, and Thriller all the way. I'm rambling, Jimmy, because I feel so strongly about this album, but
That's good.
Thriller,
Yeah, he was 24,
24, yeah,
which is still super young for what I mean. And to have it be a sixth solo record, and to have been the biggest, you know, bands of the Motown era in the '70s too. I mean that, like, you know, I mean, even if he didn't do Thriller, his career would have been massive too, right? I mean, it's crazy.
I'm sure he's still living pretty well off of, you know, Michael Jackson's estate is probably still doing pretty damn well just off the Jackson 5,
Yeah,
off of Jackson 5 money,
yeah,
let alone
yeah,
Thriller.
yeah.
If I am going to say, this isn't a criticism uh, of the artistry of the album, but the only thing that I will say is that I think that anytime an artist, and it's never been more apparent than with Thriller, is anytime an artist uh, gets to that stature where, you know, money is no longer an option. It's, you know, like, I think it sold 10 million copies very, very fast. So, you know, you said 70 right now, 40 years later. But I mean, that album was, I think it was in the top 100 for fucking years. I think it was number 1 for almost a whole year. Maybe I think Def Leppard actually knocked it off the charts with Pyromania. But I think they only knocked it off for 1 week. And then that was back up at number 1. So with that level of uber fame and just all the money in the world, and everybody thought, I'm sure everybody at the label gave into his every single whim. He could do whatever he wanted, work with whoever he wanted. It does lead to some corruption. And, you know, when you have the world at your feet and nothing is off limits anymore, you know, you get a little, you live in a bubble where you walk around with bubbles, and you live in a magic kingdom, and you close down shopping malls in order to go shopping, and you know, things got weird for him. He wasn't a weirdo before Thriller, certainly after he was. And
And unfortunately, like, his fame continued until he died, but his fame was based on him being unusual, right? Um,
yeah,
whereas,
I have one.
yeah,
I'm just gonna say I got one more really good story, and that's from Donny. Donny Osmond was about Michael Jackson's age,
okay,
and they were kind of coming up right at the same time. The Osmonds were very popular in the late '70s, Donny and Marie. And I remember a story that Donny Osmond, I can't remember where I heard this, but he said it was funny. Like he knew Michael Jackson because they grew up, they were showbiz families, so they ran into each other here and there, and they weren't friends, but they were friendly.
Okay.
And of course, Donny Osmond had handlers. Michael Jackson had handlers, but for his 16th birthday, I think, or maybe it was his 18th birthday, uh, Donny Osmond got like a Trans Am or some kind of really cool car, a Firebird maybe, or whatever was the hottest car of the day. And he ran in as he was leaving a TV studio. Michael Jackson was they ran into each other in the hallway. So they said their hellos, and Donnie said, "Hey man, I got this. You should see this car I got. Oh my god, this awesome car." And Michael said, "I'm gonna go look at Donnie's car. I'll be right back." And he said that Michael Jackson said, "Let's go for a ride." And Donnie was like, "Well, what the hell?" And they both had like responsibilities or whatever the hell they were supposed to do that day. But they both kind of played hooky, and they both just took off. They drove into LA. They went and got some burgers, and they drove in the car and listened to music, and they hung out for like maybe 2 hours or something like that. And then, of course, Donnie was like, "Well, geez, we better be getting back. I got a TV show to film, or you know." But he said that was a very, very nice memory for him because it was the two of them really had a lot in common. They both didn't have much of an upbringing. Donny Osmond was Mormon. Michael Jackson was raised in that strict household where he was not allowed any free time of his own to play with kids his own age. So it was a bonding moment between the two of them. And he said that they ran into each other again from time to time. And but he liked to hope that memory was as nice for Michael as it was for him. And
That's great.
so it shows that Donny Osmond doesn't remember Michael Jackson as a weirdo. He remembers him from that day when they were just two young kids hanging out, a night on the town, ripping it up. And
Nice.